Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your boy, the host, Mr. Rose. Now, DJ, you know what to do, DJ. You gotta fade us all the way out. Fade us out because we gotta talk to the people. How are y'all doing today? It is Saturday, October 7th, 2023, and this is episode number 136. Whew! You know what? I thought by now I would have hit like 160, but we had that 2-month break. But you know what, man? It was all well and good because whilst we were on that break, you guys know we were still pumping out content across all other mediums, from the Digipreneur column in the Jamaica Observer and TT Newsday. You guys know we have the Tuesday segments now on the Digipreneur segment on CNC3's Morning Brew with the host JW. That's every Tuesday at 7 a.m. And then you guys follow me all over on social media. So we have a lot of content pumping out. But yeah, man, you guys know that we love the podcast format, right? And speaking of formats, this episode kind of was sparked by a video that I had seen online the other day. And that video was from, shout-outs to the homegirl, Sifted. She's a gamer, big-time content creator right here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? We had her on the Digital World radio show a couple of months ago, right? I love what she does. Now, she made a video on LinkedIn pretty much talking about how traditional media is dead. So it caught my attention. I listened through it. And she was basically going into, why she believes traditional media to be dead. When's the last time, like she had asked, when is the last time you read the newspaper? When is the last time you picked a newspaper up and read one? When is the last time you listened to the radio other than when your uncle forces you to listen to the radio? When last have you watched a billboard? When last have you watched TV? Like, she went on, right? And it got me thinking, and I mean, I know why she kind of went the route that she did. I mean, she does believe, she stands on what she says and she believes it. And then she's also launched a new business that's going to be creating content for business owners and kind of focusing on creating content for social media, right? So, I mean, it's being said in conjunction to kind of promote the service to create content for social media, right? So, I mean, I get why she was saying what she was saying. However, right, I know that she believes that traditional media is dead, and it got me thinking, because it's not the first time people have come out and said that. And every single time I hear it, right, to me, and this is no disrespect to anybody, right? I have no problems with anybody. To me, whenever I hear it, it just shows a complete lack of understanding of what marketing is, how marketing has evolved, and how every platform has value. Every single medium, every channel, they all have pros and cons. But that's okay, because when you are creating your marketing mix as a business, Your marketing team should understand the pros and cons of every single platform. Like, you should understand the pros and cons of TV, radio, newspapers, billboards, social media, podcasting, YouTube. Like, the list goes on, right? You should understand the pros and cons of everything. And when you have your marketing mix, you get all of the pros of every single platform that you decide to use, and the cons get diminished because now you have a mix. So where, the cons of TV, the cons of TV don't matter as much when you are leveraging social media, or you're leveraging YouTube and that type of thing, right? So when you have your marketing mix, the cons of all of these platforms, because every single platform has cons. Social media has cons. So social media's biggest con is that all social media platforms operate in silos. They're not connected in any way. They all operate in silos, which is one of the reasons why people always ask, do I have to be creating content for all of these social media platforms? Which one should I choose? But what if I don't like this, or I don't like... Again, social media has tons of cons, but that doesn't take away from, the pros. The only thing that your marketing team should be focused on is, how do we minimize the cons? You minimize the cons by having your marketing mix, right? Because even another argument that I don't really like anymore is, certain platforms are for older people, certain platforms are for younger people. I don't really think that's true of almost anything anymore, because I've had people stop me in their 70s and told me they're in their 70s. And they're like, yo, they watch me on TikTok. I've had people in their 20s tell me, yo, they love reading my column in newspapers. Right? You still have people using Snapchat, young and old. Right? So I don't even like the conversation about, what age group of people do this, that, and the third, because I think all of that is changing. And remember too, right? I'm 36, and we're all getting up there in age. At some point, the millennials are going to be the old fogies, and we would have grown up with technology for 40, 50 plus years. We could never say the same about our grandparents or anything like that. They wouldn't have grown up with technology, but we would have grown up with technology. So we're going to continuously be evolving with the technology, and we're going to be using it well into our older ages. So we would be more digitally savvy and more tech savvy than our grandparents ever were, more savvy than our parents ever were. All right. So, and even our parents are pretty savvy. A lot of them are the ones creating the technology. So let's put that out there right then and there. A lot of our parents are the ones creating the technology that we use today. Right? A lot of the technology is not just being built by young people; it's being built by old people too. All right. So I don't like too much of the conversation about old people and young people do this or that, because I think it's all kind of it's all evolving, it's all changing, and people do what they like. So if there are people who love to use social media in their older ages, they're going to learn how to use the platforms. My mom is heavy on IG. My mom is heavy on IG, right? Not just Facebook. She's heavy on IG. So whenever I'm posting stories or regular feed post, whatever, I usually see my mom watching her or commenting or whatever the case is. She's heavy on IG. So our parents are doing a lot of things, So don't just think that it's a young people doing TikTok and old people picking up the papers, because that's not the case anymore. Everything has evolved. People are evolving. So I want to get into the topic today. Is traditional media dead? Is traditional media dead? And like I said, this is kind of looking at, the topic that Sifted had brought up, and me just looking at that, and I'm like, yo, people just don't understand how these things have evolved, right? And another thing before I dive into today's episode, I need everybody to remove their own bias. Goodness, listen. Everybody needs to remove their own bias. Just because you don't do something doesn't mean other people don't do it, right? I personally, I'll give you a great example. I personally don't watch people's video content. I create a lot of video content, though. I create loads of video content. I rarely watch video content. You'll probably get me watching more video content on TikTok, because it's only video content, but you'll quicker get me watching video content over there. But general rule of thumb is, if there's a platform like LinkedIn or Facebook that has multiple forms of content, and it's not just video content, even Instagram as well, I don't really watch video content. And I don't watch video content for one reason. The reason is that a lot of times, I don't care if it's 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that's still time it takes for me to watch your video, right? And most times, you're not saying anything that I care to give 30 seconds or a minute of my time towards. However, I would read a lot of content. So if you have a blog, I would quicker read your blog, mainly because it takes me seconds to skim through your written content to see whether or not this is something I actually want to read the entire article for. And once I skim and I see enough that I want to read it, I will then go and read the entire article. But it took seconds to do that versus a video where I have, however long the video is, I have to watch the video in order to get the essence of what you were talking about. Like I can't skim it to see if I want to watch the entire video or not. All right. So generally, I don't watch people's video content. Now, if you're somebody only creating video content, you've missed me. And that's not to say I don't want to consume your content. You're just not doing it in a format for me. Right? And we do this thing where we use our biases as this guiding compass. So just because I do it or I don't do it, that means that everybody else is doing it or nobody else is doing it. And you've shot yourself in the foot horribly. So just because my girl came out and said, well, nobody's reading the papers, nobody's listening to radio, nobody's looking at billboards, that doesn't mean that nobody else is doing it. You might not do it, but that doesn't mean nobody else is doing it. And we have to get out of that state of mind because we are shooting ourselves in the foot. We do not dictate how people consume content. We need to understand that everybody is different. There is a mix of marketing that we need to do, right? And everybody is doing everything. There is an audience for everything. There's an audience for billboards. There's an audience for TikTok. There is an audience for TV. There's an audience for, it's up to you to creatively figure out how to make all this thing work for me. So I don't decline anything. I think the only thing I haven't done is a billboard yet, right? Because, well, I just ain't fork out the money for a billboard. But I am looking at billboards because I know that when there's a particular project that I'm going to be doing, and I know I want billboards because I know what billboards do, right? So let's dive into it. Is traditional media dead? So in an age where smartphones buzz with notifications and our screens are flooded with the latest viral trends, it's easy to assume that the era of traditional media is dead. Be it newspapers, radio, television, some people think that it's fading into the annals of history. But is it really, or has it simply transformed and adopting to the digital age? We're going to be journeying through the evolution of each traditional platform and uncovering how they have reinvented themselves in this tech-driven world. We're also going to dive into the ways that it has been changing. We're going to be talking about, how we as consumers are changing and how we digest information, and why in an age of influencers, viral tweets, being featured on primetime TV or a renowned newspaper column, it still feels like a crowning achievement. So again, whether you're a media enthusiast, a digital native, or someone who still cherishes the morning ritual of flipping through a newspaper with your coffee, we're going to be diving into all of it. So let's talk about how each traditional platform has evolved. Let's start with newspapers. So, the only thing that's really changed with newspapers is that people are not buying the physical newspaper as much as they did before. So media houses have been losing money off of newspapers simply because people are not buying the newspapers like they once did. They're still buying them, just not as they once did. And that's because, guess what, folks? Newspapers have evolved. Oh my God. But how has it evolved? So now, whenever a column comes out, right? So the media house, they produce all the columns, they produce the content. Before, they would have just been putting in the newspapers, and that was that. But now, guess what? All of the articles that get created gets loaded to their website, right? So that's digital right there. What happens from there? Let's walk through the process. So it gets loaded to the website. The content gets shared across all of the media houses' social media channels. So you wonder why some of the media houses in the world have some of the largest followings, right? Think about that for a second. If nobody cared about, remember, people are saying traditional media is dead. Newspapers are dead. Nobody's reading through newspapers. If that was the case, then why do media houses often have some of the largest platforms in the world and get some of the highest engagement on these platforms, right? Because people are consuming the content nonetheless. So the articles go to their website, they get shared across social media, right? So they would share either the links to the content. Media houses also will create bite-sized digestible pieces to highlight that particular article, post it. Could be a carousel, could be just an image with a headline or whatever, then drive people to the link to the link in bio to go get all the information. Maybe they're creating Google web stories. So this is not a big practice locally, but abroad, a lot of the media houses create Google web stories, which are digestible pieces in the form of a story that get uploaded, and when they get searched, it shows up on Google Discover. If you have an Android device, if you swipe left, you have that Google feed. If you're on an iPhone, when you click on the Google search bar, there's a feed that pops up, and the Google web stories show up right then and there, and you'll see them. And it's a mix of audio, video, and images as well with clickable links. Right. So again, that's another digital addition to the media houses. Right. So then the articles themselves, once they get loaded to the website, they are also now getting indexed to the search engines. And media houses in each country, they get priority in the search engine feeds. They also get prioritization on social media. So what does that look like for the search engines? If you have a website and you upload some content to whatever, let's just say if you get page 1, you might get page 1, you might get bottom of page 1, midway page 1, you might get page 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, right? Media houses, also you could upload some content to your website and Google or Bing or whoever might take days, sometimes weeks, or sometimes not at all, index your information and then show it on the search engine. Show it on page 1, show it on page 2. That might take a couple of days when you are putting content on your website, unless you have a highly ranked authoritative website. But usually, on average, it takes a couple of days for Google to index your content and get it up on the search engines, right? So when someone does a search, your stuff comes up as a result. But with the media houses, they get automatic indexing. So as soon as they hit publish, boop, Google indexes automatically one time. And they always get prioritization. So when you do that search, chances are, once their articles pop up, it's going to be within the top 5, 6 slots in the search engine results on page 1. So that's what priority feed looks like, right? So for me as a column writer, because I have my own branded column, I'm always looking at what people are actively searching for that relates to my business, and I create that content and get it out of my columns in Jamaica Observer and TT Newsday, because that way, as soon as somebody searches and they see my column in top of the list for their search, right? Because media houses get priority, they're going to see my face, my branded column, read the column, and then they visit back. They either reach out to me directly or they go visit my website. All right? Then, what people clearly have missed is that we have major applications like Apple News, Google News, Flipboard. Think of all of the major news apps. Again, people might not be buying the papers as they once did, but you damn sure cannot tell anybody anything that people are not using Apple News apps and Google News apps when Apple is making a major deal out of their news apps. And Apple News apps was a part of their Apple event, not this year, but I think last year. They spoke about how they have redesigned and redefined what Apple News is because of the popularity of the app. What you guys don't know is the only way your content can show up in Apple News or Google News or these news platforms is you have to have your content in, guess what? In the newspapers, because that is what's getting picked up in these applications. Your personal website's not showing up in Apple News, right? It is media houses content that shows up in Apple News and these platforms. So again, newspapers are not dead. They could never die because there is a major digital component. Not to mention when you visit their websites, media houses for the most part have a push notification list as well. So when you sign up, a notification pops up, hey, do you want to subscribe to the Google, the business section, the sports section, whatever, and then you check off whichever list you want to be part of, and you apply. And then anytime an article comes up for that particular section, bam, a notification is sent to your mobile device or your tablet or your computer so that you know, okay, new content is up, click, and then you go and read. Not to mention, a lot of media houses have email lists and email recaps of content that came out that can fit your specific need. So, is newspapers dead? Absolutely not. The only thing that has changed is, one, people are not buying as much newspapers as they used to, but that's because there are so many other ways to consume the news from the media house. So many other ways to consume those articles, right? Media just needs to figure out how to monetize, because before people had to buy the newspapers. Now they don't have to buy the newspapers to consume the information. So we just busted that myth. Newspapers are not dead, just evolved, right? And it evolved in a great way. And people, if you realize why contributing to a media house is huge, I just gave you guys multiple reasons, because media, especially for the newspapers, is able to get you into nooks and crannies of the internet that you don't have access to, right? So that is the big reason why I myself started to write for the media houses. I want to be everywhere all the time, and that requires you learning how these things work so that you can get your brand into each nook and cranny all over the place. Because again, you don't know how people are consuming the information, right? Your job is just to create your marketing mix. Next up is TV. Is TV dead? Absolutely not. Content airs on TV, right? So TV still has a massive audience. Now, locally, right, people might not be watching TV outside of morning shows and 7 o'clock news. So I remember I have my radio show. They actually offered me a TV show. And I was like, nope, unless my TV show is airing during the morning show or 7 o'clock news, I see no point, right? I'm like we watch Morning shows and 7 o'clock news. Anything else? No, I'm good. Right? I don't know anybody that, and I mean that's not just my. I mean that probably is my bias. Like who else watches TV outside of those two things? But people are not really watching local TV. They're watching other things, right? But morning shows, 7 o'clock news. Those are things that religiously Caribbean people do not miss, right? Anything else is a bit a little flaky. So the TV airs their content. They then chop up the segments to then add to their YouTube channels. And then they publish the segments on social media. So there's your digital component right there. They also live stream their entire shows on their website. Some live stream on Facebook as well or on YouTube. People get the clips of the video. So let's just say if you were the one that got featured on TV or you got interviewed, people get those clips sent to them. They then share those clips on their own platforms, and that is a tremendous help in building their credibility to enforce social proof. Remember, media, getting featured in media is still a crowning achievement. When people get featured in the newspapers, they're clipping out the feature. People, and depending on the publication, people are framing it because it's an achievement. It is an achievement to get featured in traditional media, right? People are using that as credibility to enforce social proof. All right? So TV will never die. The only thing it'll do is evolve. That is it. All right? It's not going to die anytime soon. Next up is radio. Radio, especially in the Caribbean, still has massive listenership. Right? I would argue that radio is the biggest of all traditional media platforms. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I truly believe radio is the biggest of the traditional media platforms in the country, in the Caribbean region, right? Think about it. They play radio in all of our transportation. You go in a maxi, it's radio. You're in taxis, it's typically radio, right? Some maxis are playing their own music, whatever, but for the most part, the majority of our transportation is playing their radio stations, right? We also spend a lot of time in traffic here in the Caribbean, so people are tuned in. People are tuned in. And get this, there are over 1 million cars in the country of Trinidad and Tobago. They're listening to radio. Also, radio live streams, for the most part, most radio stations live stream on their websites, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of radio apps as well that pick up all of the signals, and people listen to radio in their respective countries around the world. Heck, even when I'm on, even right in Freedom 106.5, right? The amount of people that are locked in from around the world, because again, they're Trinis who are living in New Zealand, they're living in Austria, England, the US, Canada, and they message all the time, or they call in all the time. They are locked in because they're paying attention to what is happening back home, or they want to hear news from back home, or they want to hear stations from back home. So all of these radio applications that people download on their devices, that's all digital. That's all digital. And that's why radio still has global reach. It's not just people listening in your home country. It has national reach and global reach because of the applications and the live streaming websites. Heck, growing up, listen to me. My mom religiously WAC 100. From as long as we've had a computer. As long as we've had internet, and as long as WAC 100 has been streaming on their website, we have been listening to WAC 100 home in Toronto since I was a child. All right? So Radio is not dying anytime soon. Radio just has evolved because now there's more ways to consume radio. There's the applications, there's the websites, and also what people are doing now, what media houses are doing is they're getting smart. They're taking the best content, they're editing it and turning it into podcast episodes. Think breakfast television out in New York, right? People forget. We don't live in the States, right? The majority of us that watch breakfast television's YouTube channel don't live in the States, right? I don't live in the States. I've never lived in the States. And we've been listening to breakfast television for with Charlemagne and DJ Envy. We've been listening to that for how long, right? All the guests passed through. If radio was dead, why is it that all of the guests, all of the celebrities, why do they all pass through Breakfast Show? Why do they all pass through Breakfast Club? If radio is dead, they would see no value in coming through to Breakfast Club. But they do because Breakfast Club has a massive, massive following. And again, it's still radio. They have just learned to evolve it. They get the clips, they record it, they post to the YouTube channels, they live stream on their platforms. You can listen to the station through the application. There's so many ways to consume the content. And it's become one of the biggest radio stations in the world. Breakfast Club. All right? So again, radio is not dead. It has evolved and again, probably just evolved more than anything else. And remember too, right? And this is the reason why I love podcasting. Audio content is the only form of content that allows for passive consumption. So people are able to listen to a podcast. They can go work out, they can cook, they can clean, they can drive to work, they can do other things while consuming the content. That's why radio is never going to die. Because people have cars, people have apps, they have the app, they have the radio apps, they have the websites. They can go and drive and do other things and still listen to their favorite radio stations. All right? There are people like my uncle who lives downstairs of me, right? First thing he does in the morning is he heads out into the yard and he turns on the radio and it's two big speakers playing a radio station. So when he's working in his workshop, he's hearing the radio. Again, passive consumption. You can listen to the radio and do other things. So radio is never going to die, right? It is going to evolve. And most importantly, and I'll stress this again, whenever you are featured on a newspaper, whenever you get a feature on TV, whenever you get called to do an interview on radio, traditional media is the only form of media or only channel that when you get featured, people message you, congrats for getting on TV, congrats on your feature in the newspaper, congrats on your radio interview. I tuned in, I listened to it. Oh my God, it was amazing. You have people who might never buy a newspaper, might not watch no TV, might never listen to radio. But when you announce you're featured on any one of those channels, your entire support, your entire following, your support groups are all tuning in because they know that this is an accomplishment. Still getting featured in traditional media is an accomplishment. And that is how people view traditional media. Yes, we know there's other things that they view about media, but nothing, it hasn't changed. When people see you getting featured on traditional media, they view it as an accomplishment. They congratulate you. I have my guy, Foodie Nation, Sean Alexander. When I interviewed him for Digital World radio show, right? And he had interviewed me he's starting a podcast. So he had interviewed me and we were talking about marketing and we talked about traditional media and blah, blah, blah. I think we talked about that offline. And I had told him this, right? I told him that exact same thing, that people view traditional media as an accomplishment whenever you get featured, right? So when I interviewed him on my radio program a couple weeks later, and then I seen him again for something else, he was like, yo, remember when you told me traditional media accomplishment, yada, yada, yada? He laughed. He's like, bro, I understand exactly what you were saying. He's like, he's like, look how big my platform is, right? Food Nation is in the hundreds of thousands of followers, right? He's like, after doing the radio show, the radio interview, he's like, how many people messaged me telling me that congratulations and that they tuned in and it was an amazing interview? He's like, the amount of congratulations I got, he's like, I swear I won something. He's like, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it because like, these people seen me for years creating content and for years doing this, that, and the third. And the minute I get featured on your radio program, like that's when the congratulations is coming out. He's like, I never would have guessed that. He's like, I never would have guessed that type of reaction. But he's like, no, you're right. People view traditional media as an accomplishment. So it was real funny when he's like, yo, all these congratulations are coming. And he's like, what the hell? Like, yo, you guys see me all the time producing content. I do one radio interview and all of a sudden it's big congratulations. Like you swear say we won something. But that is how people view traditional media. And that's not going to change anytime soon. Traditional media still has the credibility, or it's still more credible than digital media, because anybody can create a social media platform. Anybody can start flapping their gums, right? But with traditional media, there is still a process. There's still a vetting process. There are still trained people, editors, program directors. There is still a process to getting feed. Not any and everybody can just get on. It doesn't always feel like it, but not any and everybody can just get on to traditional media, right? So there is still a process. So when you do get a feature on these platforms, it still means way more than, you just popping up on social media and just starting to talk to the world. Now let's talk billboards. Now, billboards might be the one traditional form to me that needs some work and some consideration. Because to me, billboards truly depend on location. And we have so many terribly placed billboards in Trinidad and Tobago. And then we have some that really hit the market. Like I'll give you an example. If you're in Trinidad and you're driving towards Port of Spain, you have billboards on the opposite side of the highway that it's telling you to read and then scan a QR code. Why on earth? How is that supposed to? How is your billboard on the opposite side of the highway, and you have things like QR codes telling people to scan? How are we doing that? All right. So we have some terribly placed QR codes. All right, like why? First of all, why is your billboard facing the direction of the opposite side of the highway? Of the opposite? Why is it on the opposite side of the road and it's facing people going in that direction? Like it's far. All right, it's too far. If I'm driving, whatever direction I'm driving, the billboard should be right on my left hand side. It should be right on my left hand side, right on that side closest to me. I'm saying left-hand side because we drive we have right-hand drive, so we drive on the left-hand side of the road. So if I'm on the left-hand side of the road, that billboard should be facing me on the left-hand side of the road. If you're driving on the right-hand side of the road, same thing. But you have billboards on the opposite direction facing me. That'll make no sense. Just have it face that side of the traffic. All right? But there's still some pros to billboards. So billboards still have high visibility when placed in high traffic areas. They guarantee visibility. They can't be skipped. They can't be muted. They can't be blocked like digital ads. All right. So you do get some reach. You just can't measure it. Right. But a well-placed billboard does still get the message out. It does still guarantee visibility. All right. Now, billboards also allow advertisers to target specific geographic locations, making them ideal for businesses or campaigns that want to focus on a particular region, right? They're also cost effective because, I mean, the initial investment might be high. The cost per impression for billboards can be relatively low, especially when considering the broad audience they reach over the display period, right? Now, billboards also have less digital saturation. So with the overwhelming amount of digital ads consumers are exposed to daily, billboards offer a break from screen-based advertising, potentially making them more noticeable and memorable. They also have a tangible presence. So the physical, unchanging presence of a billboard can lend a sense of stability and trustworthiness to a brand, especially in an age where digital content is fleeting. They have drive to store potential. This is a big one. So for businesses with brick and mortar locations, billboards can act as directional markers, guiding potential customers to stores and outlets. Not to mention, I got to re-emphasize this, the ad blocking immunity. So unlike digital advertising, billboards are immune to ad blockers, ensuring that the advertisement can reach its intended audience without interruption. Again, placement is key. High traffic areas is key. And then you also have captive audiences. So in areas with high traffic or a lot of stoplights, drivers and passengers become a captive audience, giving the billboard message more time to resonate. So that is really those are some key reasons why even billboards they still have a lot of pros to them, right? And again, you need to stop thinking about one solution is better than the other. Every solution has pros and cons, all of them. Your job as your marketing team's job needs to be finding the marketing mix, right? Because a well done, well placed billboard could possibly beat out content you create with a whole goddamn influencer. A well placed billboard, think about that. A well-placed, strategically good designed billboard could do better than you working with an influencer. All right? Again, this is not to say one thing is better than the other. Your job is to look and learn all of the pros and cons for everything. The cons will always balance themselves out when you have the right mix of marketing tools, platforms, strategies. The cons will all balance themselves out. Individually, I think what we think of is we think Caribbean-wide, we think that, you only got to do one, and one is the best. One is better than the other. So even in that video, Homegirl said, spend money on Facebook ads. Well, what if your audience is not on Facebook? All right? That is not a silver bullet. Marketing is not a silver. You can't have a silver bullet approach in marketing. And I'll repeat that. You cannot have a silver bullet approach in marketing. It doesn't work like that. Your job is to find that marketing mix, because every single platform that we have access to and that we use, they all have pros and cons. The pros, when you have a marketing mix, the pros are amplified and the cons of each individual platform on their own are diminished. When you have that marketing mix and they can all support each other to build your brand and your business and to continue to resonate in people's minds and continue to drive decisions, purchasing decisions, or maybe you're trying to drive traffic to build awareness or drive traffic to an event or thing, whatever your goals are. The right marketing mix is what is needed. Don't have that silver bullet mentality or that one thing is better than the next. It really isn't. Every single thing has pros and cons. And again, this episode was to show you how traditional media isn't dead and how it has evolved and how there is a digital component to every single thing. Even on a billboard, you just having, again, if If a well-placed billboard has a QR code, no problem. If it has your website, the actual link to the website, even better. Maybe it has your hashtag that you're using. There's still digital components that you could use for your billboards, right? So hopefully now you understand that all traditional platforms have evolved from newspapers, TV, radio, and billboards. They all have digital components built into them, right? And you should be figuring out how you can leverage every aspect to continue to grow your brand in this digital age. And again, all of these things still have the offline component. So you're still circulating your content in a physical newspaper. People are still watching the TV, and people are most definitely still listening to the radio on their TVs and in their radios at home. You name it. People are still listening to the radio. People are still looking at billboards. They just need to be put in the right areas. So I hope this episode gave you some really good insights. And if it did, please, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast from, please rate the podcast. The ratings continue to help grow the podcast all over the world. If you really enjoyed today's episode, please drop a review for me. The reviews help because when people are looking to consume a new podcast, they're looking at the reviews that people are leaving. So please do me a solid. If you're listening to this, please drop a review. That'll help me out tremendously. And learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms at KaronRose.com, or stay up to date with the podcast at digipreneur.fm. Both websites will be in the show notes. All right. And then you could follow me over on any of the social media platforms of your choice at Karon Rose, KeronRose. Don't forget, every single Tuesday, we have the Digipreneur segment on CNC3's Morning Brew Station. If you miss it, videos are uploaded to my YouTube channel and social media. Every single Wednesday and Thursday, we have the Digipreneur column in the Jamaica Observer, both in print and online. And then every single Friday from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m., we have the Digital World radio show on Freedom 106.5. And if you're not in Trinidad but you want to listen in, check out the Freedom 106.5 website, and you could watch the live stream every single Friday. All right. So that is it from me today, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karon Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karon Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.